Welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here and that you are here. We're starting at 11:30 on day 5, January 21st of Jambark, the Jambark Writing Summit. 10 days of building momentum so that you can complete your book in 2026. So today's one of my favorite days as it reminds us that writing doesn't have to be productive. You can just write. And also, it reminds us about self care and the importance of self help books. It's a powerful day to tell the truth. Before we begin, as we have on the other days, we begin with a land acknowledgement. I acknowledge the land I'm joining from today, and I honor the Indigenous peoples who have cared for this land since time immemorial. And because we're gathered online with many from many places, I invite you, and really, I'd like you to take a quiet moment to acknowledge the land you're on as well, and the communities past and present. Yes, yes. Jambark is a 10-day virtual writing summit for writers of all backgrounds. I was going to say all ages too, but all backgrounds, whether you're a brand new to this, you're just at the idea stage and thinking, oh, I don't even know where to start, or whether this is your 37th book. You're welcome here. You'll find things here that will help you and will keep you on your path to publishing. Whether you write memoir, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, children's books, this summit is designed to give you real momentum and a sense of community to carry you through 2026. And what makes this event especially meaningful is that many of the voices you're hearing throughout Jambark are writers whose books have been supported inside our community. People who were once uncertain like you might be, but determined that they wanted to write something. And now they have real stories out in the world. This summit is also a celebration of that. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Jeanette Sherman and Carol Humphreys. Both are community members. Jeanette's series of books celebrates childhood milestones like sleeping alone or brushing your teeth, first day of school, and all of these beautiful children's books are in vivid color and rhyme beautifully. She has a booth here, and you can get her books there or through the Jambark book booth, which is up and running. And if you go in there and you click on a book, it'll take you to their link on Amazon so that you can purchase it right away. I'm sure as you hear from the writers, you'll be inspired to hear more from them through the books, and we present them in the Jambark book booth. Our second sponsor, Carol Humphreys, who's also a member of our community. Her book is likely to be out later this year. She is a representative of a new shopping service, a new shopping experience called Shop Direct 10X. The platform champions Canadian products, and this includes a space for Canadian authors. She's going to be with us on the weekend, and she'll tell us a bit more. It's a platform that you control, and it gives you money back when you use it, as well as when you invite others to do the same. Today, we're focusing on writing as healing, and I'll be sharing a short talk to open up the theme, and then we'll hear from our panelists, Christine and Joanne. And after each session, oh, and also we have a writing workshop, a little writing workshop too, but I'll tell you in the little speech that's coming up. And after each session, Hermes encourages you to go to the lounge. Well, the webinar disappears, and then if you click go to the lounge, you'll see what looks like tables. Join there, and it kind of transforms into a Zoom-like experience. So we can continue our conversation and talk about any takeaways in a more intimate way, like we're facing each other on a table. So anyway, let me get my slides together up on stage with me, and let's begin. Yes, writing as healing, writing and healing. Your story matters. Write it to heal, write it to hold your life, write it to help others. So, and the idea about this, of course, about writing as writing for writing's sake, is that you're not writing it to impress anyone. You're writing it to be with yourself. You're writing it not to prove someone, and it doesn't have to be productive. It doesn't have to end up in a book, but certainly the joy of writing gives you these things. It might be that it offers you release. Oof, they say that writing and journaling is equal to meditation in terms of the healing benefits. And as we talk about ways to get to know ourselves better, writing is definitely one of them. And getting that stuff out of your head and onto paper in one way or another gives you that release, because it takes it out of your head, and you're working on understanding the words as you do that. Doing that provides clarity, and because you're doing it just for yourself, you're not writing it to share. You can learn to be honest, and so that you can in some ways develop self-trust. It's a way of remembering. Yes, like sometimes you'll have something wonderful that happened, or something that's not so wonderful that happened, and it's a way of noting that down so you can deal with some of those feelings. Writing is a way of regulating your emotion. For many, it's survival. It's the only way that they can clear some of the gunk. And definitely, it's a way of praying. And you don't have to do this to publish it for it to matter. Because writing it helps you in here, in your soul, because it helps you to name what happened. It helps you to make meaning without forcing closure. You're not, you don't have, you don't, at the time, it's like mindfulness, because at the time when you're writing, you're, you're naming what's happened or what is happening, and closure isn't necessarily part of it, because you're expressing, you're honoring your grief with tenderness. I mean, sometimes people start, they get the anger out too, and certainly that is so important. But it is that step of getting things out of your head, and that in doing that, you make space for some tenderness, and it allows you to hear your own voice again and again. As I mentioned, rebuild self-trust. Writing in this way isn't about writing something so that for anyone else. So it's not writing so someone says, if you're at school, that you get an A+, or if you're writing it in your book, you're not saying, oh wow, that's a beautiful passage. It's writing as a form of self-care. Because sometimes you're writing because you're overwhelmed, and we're tired of being strong. It's one of the few places where you can tell the truth without being interrupted. So writing as a healing tool includes journaling, because journaling is a form of self-care. It helps you, as I mentioned, name what happened and make meaning. The page does, oh my gosh, you should see sometimes when I'm writing, because it can sometimes be just like doodling. The page can be a mess. It doesn't even have to make sense. It is about the clearing. It can be messy, raw, and even sometimes it'll be one honest paragraph. But that's where that care comes in. So when you do this, it can actually make you a better writer, because you're practicing. As you're doing this type of writing, you're practicing emotional precision, like figuring out, what do I mean, how do I feel. And there's actually this tool that many of you have seen. It's like an emotional, what are they called again? It's kind of like a wheel of emotion. So it might start with the simpler ones, anger, and then it'll kind of point out 3 or 4 emotions linked to the next, like what, so that you can be more precise in that, and then even further still. And so there's these wheels. I did mean to include one here, but what I'll do is I'll include it in another way. but it is definitely sometimes people use it in therapy, but certainly it's a great tool for writers. It helps you by when you're doing this type of writing, developing sensory detail because you're going to talk about how you feel and where it feels in your body, perhaps like, oh, my heart is racing. And then if you're using that later for a character, you'll remember what that actually feels like. So it can make for richer writing. It can help you by creating meaning in what you're doing. You know, thank you, Elvira, and good morning, Judy. Yes, it creates, but this type of writing helps you identify the meaning behind your upset, the reason you're writing. And because it's just for you, that vulnerability, you can discover what your boundaries are. So for example, you write this for you, but then you think, you know what, this bit I'm willing to share. And we'll talk about the kind of ways people share this kind of writing. This type of journal writing is truthful and it can show your character depth and be really real to you. So I'm just thinking about some of the writing I did because I've got one of the gifts I'm giving people as part of this summit is a book that has turned into Writing the World. And it's about diversify your discourse and decolonize your language. So some of the examples are in there, came from my journals, like things that happened where I, as a Black woman, experienced the world in ways that were unique because I was an only Black person. I grew up in an area where I was the only Black person. And hey, if I always reacted to things or if we all always reacted to things that bothered us or triggered us, we'd have no friends. And so certainly when there's a lot more prickly things, you might have more things that you're repressing, but certainly journaling was a way of getting that out and learning what's acceptable to me. And I use that when I created the book as examples of how you can build diverse characters and how you can do research on that too. So often if you're like, whether you're from a marginalized group, sometimes you need permission. You think, oh, is this too niche? Is this too scary? How much do I admit? Or else if you're writing a diverse character and you're from a different group, you might think, you might want to like add complexity to that character rather than them just being a symbol or not knowing how to do the research. So this book helps you to do the research, and I used my own experience from that, and a lot of that came from my writing. And you'll hear from the panelists and that a lot of what they're writing when they wrote their self-help books that we're going to discuss at noon, that a lot of their experience and a lot of what they wrote through, all their learning came from their experience. And I'm sure that came from using journaling and this form of writing as self-care to understand yourself so that you could then point out the lessons, like, see the patterns and then help support people through it. But certainly doing all this is a skill developer and can lead to books. So when does writing become a book? Sometimes it's in helping others with a journaling practice or as your own journals. For example, one of the writers who was here on the first day, Andrew, he talked about his wife who had a catastrophic stroke where she never got 100% better, but he was able to use his journals to both inform people during the year of his wife's illness, and that year that you learn through his book determines the outcome. Because if people don't make a full recovery in that year, the recovery time after that is not as great as that. So that's partly why he was writing the book, so he could because that was also the push, like working together intensely, his medical team and himself for his wife's health. And because he journaled daily about that, he had a book afterwards, which not only was a remembrance for him, but also helped his family to know what happened. And it's been used it's kind of like what they call a behind the gurney type of book, and that's from his journal. In that, doctors and nurses can see what it was like for a patient who journaled for a year and understand how their what they did impacted both the patient and the patient's family. This kind of writing, of course, you can imagine it becomes memoir. Another of our writers is who is writing a difficult book about. Actually, it's about the murder of her mother and the journaling about what happened both in the court system, because unfortunately, she's not going to be the last one lost through this. Her book can help others who face it. It'll be a gift for someone who thinks, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. They can give this gift to someone they know is harmed in this way. And also, it points out some of the unfairness in the system for the families of victims, amongst other things. Poetry, self-help, we're going to talk about with Joanne and with Christine, because their amazing books, came, I'm sure, from this type of work. Poetry, that's again links us to Andrew, who, yes, he is amazing, Elvira. And through the writing the workshop, we'll see what you make come out of that. Essays, talks, workshops, community programs, all this comes from the writing you do, which is often part of your survival, which then can help someone else to survive. So the panel that's coming up, woo! So healing requires space and permission, really. And so in Joanne's book, which is called The Power of the Pause, we learn about pausing, stopping, getting off that wheel so that you can actually take time. And then Christine's book reminds us of the power of imperfect, the power of giving yourself permission to not expect to do everything right and to know everything on the first go. We don't heal in a straight line, and certainly our knowledge doesn't come in a straight line. It comes often from that experience. And so we will have Joanne Hudspeth and Christine Culbertson talking about their books. Joanne's The Power of Pause, and Christine, The Power of Imperfect. And let's see if I've got a bit of notes on that I wanted to say. No, just that we're going to explore what helped them heal and what they learned while writing, as well as what changed when they shared their work with the world. And after that, we are honored to have a gift from Elvira. I'm so pleased about this because she's experienced some of these writing workshops that I've led before. And so she's giving us the gift of starting that with a sound blessing. Thank you so much, Elvira. And in that workshop, we're going to go through a little exercise that kind of will help you connect you to some memories, but also then has a healing layer on top of that. So let's see what I've got next. The key thing is always in this summit is to remember that your story matters. And this is a slide I've forgotten to show for each of the previous days because it's also linked to our discussion point. So your story matters. And for this one, I want you to remember that what you write, you don't have to publish. It can be for you. And if you do choose to publish it, you don't have to write it alone. And so you can have support in terms of how to keep yourself safe, because you don't have to share everything when you write a book. You have to learn your own boundaries and share what you need so that you can make your point. But certainly you don't want to share stuff that makes you feel exposed or too vulnerable. And how, because there's always ways. An example I'll give before we turn off to go off is that in a book, I worked with these women. My very first book as a coach was called Simply Women: 30 Stories of Magnificent Women Who Made It, something like that. I can't remember the exact title, unfortunately. But in one of them, the person who had done her the most harm was actually her brother. But she had worked through her family, her whole family, and healed that. So she didn't want to reopen it. Her healing was important, but she didn't need to name him for the points to be made. So we talked about a way that she could do this so she could tell her story, but still keep, not upset the healing that had occurred in her own family, and but as a coach, she wanted to be able to share her lessons, and I was able to help her. She didn't have to do that alone, because I do this, and invest in best practice and all that. I was able to help her tell her story safely. So thank you so much for being here on this day of Writing is Healing. Next up at noon, in about 7 minutes, you're going to meet Joanne and Christine. And so now, as I end this session, you'll see a note that the webinar will disappear, and you'll see that you can go to the lounge. And when you go there, you'll see tables. At the tables, if you click a seat, it becomes like Zoom, and it's almost like you're facing people like at a table, and we can have a little more of a discussion. So a takeaway could be what ways you might use writing for healing if you don't already, or even what are your favorite self-help books. See you at the tables.